Namaste Vidya. Myself JVN Neha Seni from Physiotherapy and Diagnostics. I am going to tell you about the anatomy of the eyeball. Now, the eyeball contains the outer eye. The outer eye, which is a part of eye, contains the eyelids. Eyelids fulfill two main functions, that is protection of the eyeball and secretion, distribution and drainage of the tears. Anatomy of the eyelid. Eyelid contains a muscle known as levator palpebri. It protects the cornea and eyeball from injury. In the diagram we can see the levator palpebri superioris muscle, which is the palpebral muscle responsible for blinking of the eyes. Then we have canthi. Singular word is canthus. These are the corners of the eye, also known as angles of the eye. Caruncle is located near the medial canthus and contains sebaceous glands. In the diagram we can see the caruncle. The tarsal plates are made up of connective tissue and strengthen the eyelid. They contain meibomian or glands which secrete lipid to create airtight seal when closed and also prevent eyelids from sticking together. This is the eyelid structure which we have discussed in the previous slide. Here we can see the LPS, that is the levator palpebri superioris muscle. Then we can see in the lids the tarsal plate and the meibomian glands. Then conjunctiva. Conjunctiva is a mucous membrane lining the eyelids and covering the anterior eyeball up to the edge of the cornea. At the upper and the lower reflections between the eyeball and the lid, the conjunctiva forms two sacs like superior and the inferior fornix. So in the diagram, the red line is your conjunctiva, and this is the superior fornix on the superior side, and this is the inferior fornix on the inferior side. Then we have lacrimal apparatus. Lacrimal apparatus is concerned with the tear formation and the transport. Lacrimal passage includes lacrimal gland, conjunctival sac, lacrimal puncta, lacrimal canaliculi, lacrimal sac, nasolacrimal duct. So here we have discussed in this diagram the lacrimal gland and lacrimal canaliculi. This is lacrimal gland, and the small ducts, these are the lacrimal ducts. Then from here the tear comes into your eyes, and then it is drained by this canaliculus. These canaliculus, superior and inferior, collect the tears and transfer it to the lacrimal sac. Then from here it is transferred to the nasolacrimal duct, and finally it is secreted in the inferior meatus of the nose. So here we can see the lacrimal crest, which is lying in the maxillary bone, the anterior and the posterior lacrimal crest. Then in the posterior lacrimal crest it lies in the lacrimal bone, and the anterior lacrimal crest it lies in the maxillary bone. Secretory system includes the lacrimal gland, accessory gland. Lacrimal gland is above and anterolateral to the globe, secretes tear into the superior fornix. It tears, moisten and lubricates the cornea and the conjunctiva. Lacrimal gland is a yellow, soft lobulated serous gland. It contains large orbital part and the smaller palpebral part. The orbital part has the shape and the size of an almond, lodged in the lacrimal fossa in the anterolateral part of the roof of the orbit and posterior to the orbital septum. So here we can see the lacrimal gland. This is the lacrimal gland situated in the lacrimal fossa in the superolateral part of the orbit. Then the smaller palpebral part, it is only 1/3 size of the orbital part, and it is lodged in the lateral part of the upper eyelid. It is continuous with the orbital part around the lateral margin of the upper necrosis of levator palpebri superioris. In spite of that, we have accessory glands also. These are small compound branch tubular glands, and these are located in the mid of the eyelid, superior and inferior fornices. Then the ectopic portions of the lacrimal gland tissue, these are the accessory lacrimal glands. There are two accessory lacrimal glands, glands of Krause and glands of Wolfring. So here we can see the glands of Krause and the gland of Wolfring. These are the two accessory lacrimal glands. Then we have conjunctival sac. This is the diagram to show you the conjunctival sac. This yellowish part is the conjunctival sac. Then the duct system. The gland has 12 short slender ducts. Slender means very thin, and these arise from the lower part of the gland. They open into the lateral part of the superior fornix of the conjunctiva. Then the lacrimal canaliculi. There are two lacrimal canaliculi. Length is 8 to 12 millimeters long, and the course is 2 millimeter of the vertical part and 8 to 10 millimeter of the horizontal part. So lacrimal canaliculi has two parts, the vertical and the horizontal. Here in the diagram we can see this is the horizontal part and this is the vertical part of the two canaliculi. Their union, 90% of them unite as a common canaliculus, and in about 10% open separately in the lateral wall of the orbital sac. Then the wall of Rosenmuller, it is a mucosal fold, overhangs the junction between the common canaliculi and prevents the reflux. So wall of Rosenmuller lies over here, which prevents the reflux of tears from canaliculi. So here we can see the lacrimal gland, the orbital part and the palpebral part. This is the orbital part which is larger, and this is the palpebral part which is smaller. Then these are the smaller lacrimal gluts. Then here we can see the canaliculus, and this is the lacrimal sac. So here you can again see the conjunctival sac over here, it lies. Then lacrimal sac, it is a small sac lodged in the lacrimal groove. It is about 12 millimeters long and have blind upper and the lower ends. The lower end is continuous with the lacrimal duct, nasolacrimal duct. It is covered by lacrimal fascia. So here we can see the lacrimal duct which is lying in the bone, and lacrimal sac. This is the lacrimal sac. Nasolacrimal duct. It is a tube half an inch in length and runs through the nasolacrimal canal. It begins from the lower end of the lacrimal sac. It runs downwards, backwards, and laterally and opens into the inferior meatus of the nose. This is the nasolacrimal duct, which is 12 millimeters long, and the valve of this nasolacrimal duct is the valve of Hasner. This nasolacrimal duct opens into the inferior meatus, which lies in the nasal cavity. Valve of Hasner at the lower end of the duct is guarded by a mucosal fold, which is known as lacrimal fold, which acts as a wall preventing the nasal secretion from ascending up into the duct. Then flow of tears. Then the flow of tears. The lacrimal secretion flows down and pushed medially by the movements of eyelids. The tears moisten the eye and accumulate in the lacus lacrimalis, which is a triangular depression between the medial part of both the eyelids. It is drained by the lacrimal canaliculi to the lacrimal sac. From the sac, it descends through the nasolacrimal duct to reach the inferior meatus of the nose. So this is the diagram showing you the flow of tears from the lacrimal gland up to the inferior meatus of the nose. Please go through it. Then this is the physiology of the lacrimal apparatus. This is again the flow of tears from lacrimal gland up to the inferior meatus. Then clinical significance. First is acute dacroadenitis. It is the inflammation of the lacrimal gland. This is the image which is showing you how dacroadenitis occurs. Now the structure of the eyeball. Eyeball contains the three tunics. The outer tunic, that is the outer layer, contains the cornea and sclera. Middle tunic contains the choroid body, that is choroid coat, ciliary body, lens, and accommodation power of that lens, aqueous humor, iris, pupil, and the inner tunic contains the retina and the optic disc and the posterior cavity. So these are the layers of the eyeball. Outermost is the sclera. In the first image we can see the sclera, and on the posterior side, and on the anterior side we have cornea. Then interior to the sclera and the cornea we have choroid, and interior to the choroid we have the retina. Then in the sagittal section again we can see the three layers: the outer fibrous layer, the middle vascular, and the internal neurological. Now cornea and the sclera. The cornea and sclera forms a spherical shell which make up the outer wall of the eyeball. Here we can see the posterior 5/6 portion of the apex of the eye is formed by the sclera. It is the external fibrous tunic of the eyeball, and the anterior 1/6 is formed by the cornea. So sclera is collagenous, it is avascular, it is relatively acellular, It is perforated posteriorly by the optic nerve and the sensory and the motor nerve fibers and the blood vessel which reach the eyeball. Sclera and cornea merge at the limbus. This is again the sclera. Then this is the microscopic structure of the sclera. So on the outer side we have episcleral tissue, then in the middle we have sclera proper, and then internally we have lamina fuchsia. These are the three layers of the sclera. These are here again deeply explain how these occurs. Then cornea. Cornea is the anterior 1/6 part of the eyeball. It is having an epithelium histologically, a Bowman's membrane, and a stroma. And inside it has the Descemet's membrane, which is also the posterior limiting membrane of the cornea, and innermost layer is the endothelium. The epithelium of the sclera is stratified squamous epithelium. It is a highly specialized tissue, and the main function is refraction and the transmission of the light. So this is the main function of the cornea, and structure we have discussed in the previous image. In this diagram we can see the sclera and the cornea. It is the original view of the sclera and the cornea. Cornea in the anterior part and the sclera in the posterior part. The whitish of the eye is the sclera, and the refraction of light occurs because of the curved shape of the cornea and its greater refractive index compared with the ear. So cornea is a transparent because of the specialized arrangement of the collagen fibrils within the stroma. So the chief function of the cornea is the protection against the invasion of the microorganisms into the eye and the transmission and focusing of the light. So in the sagittal section we can see the cornea and the sclera, as well as three layers of the eyeball. These are again the cornea and the sclera. So concerned this about pelv. Then in the middle layer is also known as uvea. It contains the iris and the ciliary body, anterior side, and choroid in the posterior side. Iris is largely consists of connective tissue containing muscle fibers, blood vessels, and the pigment cells, and its center has an aperture which is known as pupil. The chief function of the iris are to control the light entry into the retina and to reduce intraocular light scatter. Pupil dilation is caused by the contraction of radial smooth muscle fibers innervated by the sympathetic nervous system. So here we can see the iris, the anterior epithelial layer, the stroma, and the anterior limiting layer. So contraction and relaxation of the circular and the radial muscles of the iris. Here we can see the pupil constricts as the circular muscles of the iris contract in the case of parasympathetic nervous system when there is bright light to the eyeball, and when there is normal light the diameter of the pupil is seen in the image. Then in the dim light the diameter of the pupil is dilated, it is enlarged because of the contraction of the radial muscle fibers. So radial muscle fibers are on the peripheral side, and on the inside we have the circular muscle fibers. These are smooth muscle fibers. Then ciliary body. It is a specialized structure uniting the iris with the choroid. It makes aqueous humor and anchors the lens via the zonules, through which it modulates the lens convexity. So here we can see the ciliaris muscle which is suspending the lens. So this is the ciliary muscle. This is again the iris and the ciliary muscles which are having three types of arrangement: radial, circular, and longitudinal smooth muscle fibers. Ciliary body, it is the modulation of the convexity of the lens by the ciliary body, is called as accommodation and is controlled by the parasympathetic fibers in the oculomotor nerve. So how much lens is convex? It is decided by the ciliary body as per the direction of the parasympathetic nerve fibers. So the posterior part of the ciliary body merges to the retina and the ora serrata. So here we can see the ora serrata. This is the ora serrata where we can have the merging of the ciliary body with the retina. Now the choroid. Choroid is the posterior part of the middle layer of the eyeball, and it contains the blood vessels, connective tissue, and pigment cells which are sandwiched between the retina and the sclera. So it provides oxygen and nutrition to the outer retinal layers. Then the lens, it is a disc-shaped lens comprises of mass of long cells known as fibers. At the center, these fibers are compacted into a hard nucleus surrounded by less dense fibers, which is the cortex. So in the outer side we have cortex, and the inner side we have the nucleus. So the lens is relatively dehydrated and its fibers contain special pigments. That is why it is transparent. So here we can see the lens. It is a crystalline lens. In the center there is a imaginary line known as equator which divides the lens into two surfaces, anterior and the posterior surface. And on the outer side we have epithelial cells. This is the cortex, and on the inner side we have the nucleus. Then the lens divides the eyeball into two segments. The anterior segment lies anterior to the lens and the posterior segment lies posterior to the lens. In the anterior segment we have anterior chamber which is containing the aqueous humor, and the posterior segment we have the vitreous body which contains the vitreous humor. Aqueous humor fills the anterior and the posterior chambers. Anterior chamber is the space between the cornea and the iris. So here we can see the anterior chamber, which is the space between the cornea and the iris. Then behind the iris and in front of the lens is the posterior chamber. So this is the posterior chamber, and they are connected by the pupil. Pupil is the space between the iris. So the formation, ciliary body forms the aqueous humor by ultrafiltration and active secretion. Now the drainage of the aqueous humor. Aqueous circulates from the posterior to the anterior chamber through the pupil, leaving the eye through the trabecular meshwork, and this is the specialized tissue in the anterior chamber angle between the iris and the cornea. From here aqueous drains into canals of Schlemm. So we can see over here the drainage. It is forming in the ciliary body, then it enters into the posterior chamber, then into the anterior chamber, and then it enters into the canal of Schlemm. Now vitreous humor. Vitreous humor is clear, transparent gel of semi-solid consistency which fills the chamber between the posterior surface of the lens and the inner surface of the retina. It is 99% water, and with the remainder being mostly a viscous substance known as hyaluronic acid. It occupies the 2/3 of the volume of the globe of the eyeball. It provides physical support and transmits the light to the retina. So then the third layer, the innermost neuronal layer of the eyeball, is the retina. At the back of the eye we contains the retina. It consists of two types of light sensitive cells which are known as rods and cones. They convert the light signal into an electrical signal that is transmitted to the brain through the optic nerve. So here we can see the retina. There are 9 layers of the retina. The most important are discussed here: the ganglionic cell, the connecting and the processing cells, photoreceptors like rods and cones, and retinal pigment epithelium. This is the innermost layer. So here we can have the 9 layers of the retina. The innermost is the inner limiting membrane. Then we have the axons of the ganglionic cells which are forming the nerve fibers. Then the ganglionic cell layer, then Muller's cell layer which are the supporting glial cells, then bipolar cells, amacrine cells, then horizontal cells, rods and cones, then innermost is the pigment cells of the choroid. Then rods and cones. Rods are the light sensor. They are 120 million in number, and they are responsible for detection of the black and white shades of the gray. While cone cells, these are colored. They detects the color. These are 7 million in number, and there are 3 types of cone cells which are sensitive to the 3 primitive color, that is red, green and blue. So here we can see the diagram of the retina, where we can see the retinal vessel, optic disc, fovea and the macula. And what are these? Macula provides for the central vision. It is a part of the retina that is responsible for the sharp detailed central vision, also known as visual acuity, and the rest of the retina is for the peripheral vision. Then fovea, it is a pit in the macula. It has no rod cells and it has high concentration of cone cells. So there are no blood vessels here to interfere with the vision and provides sharp detailed vision. That is, which is needed in driving, reading. So fovea centralis is the main point where clearest vision occurs. Then the blind spot, optic disc, it is also known as blind spot, where the optic nerve fibers converge and exit to the eye. There is no light sensitive cells to detect the light rays. It results in break in the visual field and known as blind spot. Here we can see the macula, the clearest vision, and optic disc, that is the blind spot, where the blood vessels reach the retina, and here there is no light sensitive cells are found. The retina is supplied by different branches of the central retinal artery in the vein and also from the choroid. and the retinal vessels enter and leave the eye through the optic nerve, where it nerve run in the nerve fiber layer. This is how the eyeball is receiving all the light sensations, and they are transferred through the optic nerve, and then it is transferred to the lateral geniculate nucleus, and finally the image is formed in the visual cortex. Now the muscles of the eyeball. So these are the skeletal muscles which are responsible for the movements of the eyeball. The muscles of the eyeball give support and mainly involved in the movement of the eyeball. There are two types of muscles in the eyeball: intraocular and extraocular muscles. The extraocular muscles are again divided into these types. There are 4 recti muscles, 2 oblique and 1 LPS, that is levator palpebris superioris. So there are 3 kinds of extraocular muscles. These extraocular muscles take origin from this common conjoint tendon. Now, levator palpebris superioris, it is originating from the inferior surface of the lesser wing of the sphenoid, and it has 2 lamina for the insertion. The upper lamina is voluntary, middle is involuntary, and lower lamina is again involuntary. Upper lamina is inserted on the anterior surface of the superior tarsus and the skin of the upper eyelid, while middle lamina, it is inserted on the superior margin of superior tarsus, and the inferior lamina is inserted on the superior conjunctival fornix. So here we can see the 3 lamina of the LPS. So where we can see the levator palpebris superioris, this is the superioris muscle, and here we can see the different laminas of the LPS. Then the nerve supply. The voluntary part is supplied by the oculomotor nerve and involuntary supplied by the sympathetic nerve fibers. Action on this muscle, as the name indicates, it is causing the elevation of the upper eyelid. Then the recti muscles. There are 4 recti muscles which are originating from the common ring of connective tissue. This is known as common tendinous ring, also known as annulus of Zinn. So here we can see this is the annulus of Zinn, from where the 4 recti muscles are originating. Insertion is on the sclera at different distances from the limbus. This limbus is the junction between the cornea and the sclera. It is forming a spiral known as spiral of Tilloch's. So this is the spiral of Tilloch's, where different muscles are inserting on the sclera. The 4 recti muscles which are inserted on the sclera in front of the equator. Distance from the cornea of these 4 recti muscles are: for medial rectors, the distance from the cornea is 5.5 millimeters. For inferior rectors, it is 6.5 millimeter. For lateral rectors, it is 6.9 millimeter, and for the superior rector, it is 7.7 millimeters. So as the name indicates, they are same in the location. Medial rectus is on the medial side, inferior rectus on the inferior side, lateral rectus is on the lateral side, and superior rectus is on the superior side. Now this is the spiral of Tilloch's, which is the mode of insertion of these 4 recti muscles on the sclera at different distances from the cornea. So this is the superior oblique muscle. You just go through the diagram and the attachments in your book. Here I am just telling you the location of the superior oblique muscle. There are 2 oblique muscles, superior oblique and the inferior oblique. The superior oblique muscle is originating from the lesser wing of the sphenoid, and is inserted on the anterior end, lies on the 12 to 14 millimeter behind the limbus, that is again on the sclera, and posterior end lies on the 17 to 19 millimeter behind the limbus, and it again supplied by the 4th cranial nerve, that is the trochlear nerve. Then the another oblique is the inferior oblique. It forms a shallow depression on the orbital plate of maxilla. So here it arises and it is inserted on the sclera again, and it is supplied by the oculomotor nerve. So here we can see the muscles of the eyeball: extraocular muscles, superior, inferior rectus, medial rectus, lateral rectus, inferior oblique, and the superior oblique. This is the diagram, this is the table for all the muscles of the eyeball along with their origin and their nerve supply. Nerve supply of all the extraocular muscle is same, that is by the oculomotor nerve, except 2 muscles. This you can learn with the help of this mnemonic which I am writing on this image, that is SO4. LR6. SO4 means superior oblique is supplied by the fourth cranial nerve, that is the trochlear nerve. LR6 means lateral rectus by the sixth cranial nerve, that is abducent nerve. So this is the mnemonic for learning the nerve supply of the extraocular muscles of the eyeball. Then here I have discussed about the actions of the muscles of the eye. So in this table you just go through it. It is very simple. As the name indicates, that is their function. So this is a diagram to showing you the action of the extraocular muscles of the eyeball. You just draw this diagram in your copy and it is very easy to remember. For example, medial rectus, it is pulling the eyeball towards the medial side. Lateral rectus is pulling the eyeball towards the lateral side. So lateral side movement means away from the midline. This movement is known as abduction, and medial side movement is towards midline. This movement is known as adduction. So this way you can learn the movements of the eyeball with these diagram. So adduction, supraadduction means superior movement. Intorsion means towards the medial rotation. Extorsion means lateral rotation. Introduction means when you are looking downwards, so it is depression. Abduction means movement away from the midline. So blood supply is same, that is these muscles are supplied by the ophthalmic artery. Then the intraocular muscles of the eyeball, these are ciliary muscles which are help in accommodation of the eyeball. Sphincter pupillae and dilator pupillae. Sphincter pupillae, as the name indicates, it constricts the pupil, and dilator pupillae, it dilates the pupil. Disorders include amblyopia, that is partial loss of vision in one or both the eye. Diplopia, that is perception of two images from the single object. Nystagmus means involuntary movement of the eyeball. So here we can see the strabismus, that is misalignment of the visual axis of the two eye. So it can be medial, it can be lateral strabismus because of the paralysis of a particular muscle. Then visual problems include myopia, hyperopia, presbyopia, and astigmatism. You just go through it. These are very common and very simple. For example, myopia, also known as nearsightedness, means inability to focus the light from the distant objects. That is, the patient can see the close objects clearly, but cannot see the objects which are distantly placed because the image is forming in front of the retina. So this is myopia. Then hyperopia, it is the inability of the eye to focus the light from near objects. There is no difficulty in seeing the distant object, but the patient cannot see the closely placed object. So the causes for this is the cornea and the lens is too weak. Then presbyopia, it is a form of hyperopia that occurs with the age. The causes is the lens becomes less elastic, so there is no result of the eyeball being too short, and correcting the image is done by the converging lenses. This is astigmatism. It is a vision problem that results from cornea that is irregular in shape. Then glaucoma is a disease of the eye in which the fluid pressure within the eye rises, and if left untreated, the patient may lose vision or may even become blind. So this is the case of glaucoma, where there is increase in the intraocular pressure because of the blockage in the drainage of the tears. Then this is the recent advances in the eye, where we can use the laser eye surgery for removal of or correction of any kind of disease of the eye like myopia, hyperopia, and astigmatism. Now the questions regarding this topic are: you can write short note on layers of the eyeball. There are 3 layers. Then you can discuss about these layers. Then myopia, it is the applied. The intrinsic muscles of the eye, that is your sphincter and the dilator pupillae. Now in the exercise, you draw this diagram and label all the structures which are marked in this image, and use the same colors as these are depicted in the diagram. Then this completes the topic, the eyeball. Thank you.